Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm writing to The Nature of Consciousness, Exploring Origins and Impact, J. Lakhani Hindu Academy. So what is the nature of consciousness? I don't know if I've ever heard Lakhani here say the nature of it. Anyways, let's go and get started.
What this brain is, it is a mere conduit of consciousness. It's a switch that allows consciousness to flow. You require this complex phenomena. If you're amoeba, then you got cognition, just awareness, not consciousness. When you evolve to the human stage, this becomes very complex.
Hold on, I'm going to rewind that. Wait, what? Hold on. Sorry.
What this brain is, it is a mere conduit of consciousness. It's a switch that allows consciousness to flow. You require this complex phenomena. If you're amoeba, then you got cognition, just awareness, not consciousness. When you evolve to the human stage, this becomes very complex and turns into consciousness. So the idea of consciousness is not something that is produced by matter, but requires a very elaborate mechanism, a material mechanism to manifest itself.
Okay, so Lakhani here speaks of awareness as awareness, consciousness, Brahman or Atman, and consciousness as essentially the mind, not the brain, but the mind, I believe.
So this is a switch. So I told the scientists, all you've done is broken the switch. You've not touched consciousness. You interfered with the switch, the conduit through which consciousness flows through. Now you see, my work personally, because I'm very pleased you asked this question, my personal individual work is precisely this, to link up these two major hard problems of physical sciences, which is consciousness. I tell you how serious the problem is. Quantum physics can be summarized in the following way. They say, you see this material we are sure about? Actually, when you try and get a pinch of it, try and get to the smaller than the smallest, it seems to elude us. At best, we can describe reality not to be material, but mathematical. So far, so good, because mathematically, quantum physics is perfection itself. It gives answer to the 10th decimal places. All your gizmos work on that. Even your DNA works on that. So this works to the 10th degree. But when the question arises, as the gentleman said, how can this mathematical reality and metaphysical reality turn into physical world that we see in front of us? You require a conscious observer to flip it. And this is where the issue stands at the moment. And science, physics says, Mr. Lakhani, go away. We don't want consciousness in our field, material stuff, go away. They don't want to accept the word consciousness in quantum. And yet it sits there in the middle of it saying, now explain. So do you know how they're trying to explain reality? How this thing from the mathematical becomes material? This is called, if you like, many world scenario. I'm really digressing, but it's such a lovely question. I must explore it. He says the way we can explain how this happens actually doesn't happen. They say every instant of time, while I'm talking to you, at every infinitesimal second of time, copies of ourselves, the whole creation, every sun, moon, star, all these EY offices, all have been moving away from each other. At every infinitesimal moment of time, infinite copies of ourselves are moving away. This is the only way you can avoid conscious observer in your physics. This is called divergence with a vengeance. Imagine infinite copies of ourselves already, infinite times already been moved away. Now, if you're prepared to go down that line, that means you're thrown in the towel. Science progresses through convergence, not through divergence. This is divergence with a vengeance. So how will they resolve it? They'll have to come here. Because the idea of consciousness sits at the heart of, if you like, some of the most important issues that we face in neuroscience. What the heck is this? Where does it spring from? Why is it such a substratum of reality? And what is this thing called quantum? The linkage is at this deeper level. And you see, when I see people like Daniel giving, I tell you, I explain, he writes big books on consciousness. All he does is, he produces a jungle of jargon, computer jargon, and he gets lost in it and wants you to follow him get lost. I've explained consciousness away. What the heck? Just because you invent lots of vocabulary in order to explain this away doesn't mean that you explained it. The hard issue, the hard problem of modern physics and the hard problem of life sciences is the convergence is the name of the game. And here I stand. And in days to come, what I'm suggesting will become mainstream.
was lost for most of that. Although I was doing that just to point out, Lakhani always does this. I'm always afraid he's gonna poke out of his eyes because he constantly removes and has his glasses. It's a little quirk I notice about him. Everyone has a little bit of a quirk. I don't know if I do. I'm sure I do. I probably do. But I'm afraid. Like the last time he put him on, he looks like he blinked, kind of like he was about to poke his eye out. As he removes it. Yeah, okay. Hold on. When he puts it on, you notice that he's
This is divergence with a vengeance. So
because he
how
does it
will they
one-handed.
resolve it? They'll have to come here. Because the idea of consciousness sits at the
He closed his eyes. So I'm not the nature of conscious. Very so. I did not quite follow him on this one. Again, I'd have to watch it a few more times to fully understand it. As a matter of fact, I will. So I'll pause it so you don't have to suffer through this. Hold on. Even after watching it, I'm still a little bit lost. He talks about infinitesimal number, infinite copies of ourselves every second of the time going away from us, divergent. I can only assume that's my assumption is we're if you I have theories and assumptions. I don't know if they're right, but like obviously sun in order for you to see me, sun or light has to bounce off me and go to the webcam, and that's a version of me going into the webcam, and then you can see me. So this, but it's also being bounced off that way, that way, that way, that way, like every single direction, and and if I guess if something far enough can somehow collect that light so that it's focused, because I'm assuming as it gets further and further away, the light kind of spreads out so the image gets blurrier, like pixel, not pixelated, but like pixelated probably, and like lines because light dissipates as it gets further. I'm assuming. Obviously, when you turn on a flashlight, it doesn't have infinitely, it doesn't brighten up all the way straight. You see it kind of expand out eventually to where it just dissipates, where you can't really light up too far away. So that's actually a great example of like whenever light hits me and it comes out, you can see me because of the light reflecting. If there's no light bouncing off me to your eyes so that you can't see me. So that's my assumption on that one. Um, Other than that, I'm not sure. Uh, if you want to explain to me what it means by this, by all means. But the nature of consciousness is saying this world is easily to explain in mathematics, but very difficult to put into a physical form, which is kind of weird. I don't know. I was just starting to think like, man, what if they dig so deep into this? It turns out like the Matrix, where you go drill down into the smallest thing, you end up seeing like freaking green lines. Doesn't have to be green lines, but just like code. We start seeing code in our DNA. Well, obviously our DNA has code in it, but like you know what I mean, computer code like deeper down. Anyways, I'm really confused about this one. I was hoping it makes a little bit more sense. Let me know in a short, kind of brief detail if you happen to know what he means and whether I was right about what I said about the light in terms of what he's trying to explain. So if you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, the sound down below. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next vid.